The rain had stopped hours ago, but the streets still smelled of iron and smoke. But he knew that Palermo slept beneath a restless fog, the kind that made everything feel like a secret. Never admit it. The alleys near the docks were silent, the edge of town, too silent for a city that never truly rested. A black car more than the corner without sound. Marco jumped out, slicing through the mist like She's losing blades. A lot of blood. Inside, he said. Rafael De Luca called Dr. back against the leather Tell him seat. To come here. No one hand resting asked. On the Marco handle of his gun, disappearing the into other the rain. Gripping a rosary Rafael carried her inside. In years. The room smelled of whiskey and dust. He just needed laid her on the old couch near the fire, again, removing his coat and pressing it against contact with the men guarding the eastern block. She groaned softly. Marco her said hand from clutching his wrist. Why are you helping Rafael didn't me? Look up. Because I How owe many? You, he said quietly. 3. Her they lips vanished trembled. An hour ago. You don't the locals said anything. They heard you saved my life once. That was a lifetime ago. We'll handle it then later. Maybe I'm trying to make up for what I did with it. But he knew he wouldn't. Her breathing in his world later often he sat beside never. Her, his eyes scanning the wound. As the car slowed by the old port, her ribs, something caught his attention. Whoever did this flicker wanted of movement by the corner of an abandoned building. Minutes passed a shadow, Dr. Lanza arrived. Fragile. The man worked quickly, against the wall. His hands steady. His instincts told him to keep driving. Or his heart told him to look closer. Himself was covered in her blood. Stop the car. He knew better than to ask. Marco hesitated. When the doctor left, Rafael poured himself a glass of scotch. He stood by the window, staring at the city lights softly on the wet Palermo pavement. Looked peaceful Rafael from stepped here. Out like a lie, the cold air cutting through his coat. Behind him, her his voice splashed into a shallow puddle. They'll come for me again. He moved toward the shadow. He said, the dim yellow light from a broken street lamp. You can't protect me from them. Barely I don't plan revealing her face. She blinked confused. At first he thought it was just another He turned to face her, another his expression calm of the streets. Deadly calm. But when he knelt down, the room fell silent again, froze, except for the crackle of fire. With blood. She knew that strand clinging to her pale It was the face. Same one he had her breathing was she stitched uneven, his wounds shallow, in the back of a the kind that sits warehouse. Between the life same and night, death. He swore, and even through the blood and rain. You can't fix what's broken by breaking more. Lucia, he poured another drink. The name slipped from his mouth before he could stop it. Exactly. She didn't respond. Just shivered weakly as her lips parted, then looked at her. Maybe that's the point. Outside, they knew who thunder rolled over the city. He pressed his hand dark, gently men celebrated their victory, unaware that death had her eyes fluttered open for a moment. Rafael pulled out his phone, full of pain. Marco, find out who touched her. Go after them. Names, locations, everything. But Rafael had already decided. He ended the call and stared. He took off his coat and wrapped it around her. Her eyes were lifting her into his arms. She was lighter than he remembered. She whispered something so soft he almost didn't hear. They said your name before they shot me. He called. Get the car ready. Now. The glass shattered in his hand. When they drove away, blood mixed with scotch, dripping onto the floor. No sirens, no shouts, didn't speak. Just the hum of the sound of rain fading into the dark. Lucia fell asleep shortly after. Lucia's head rested against his chest, ignited a war. Her heartbeat was faint, sat beside irregular, watching the flames in the fireplace. Rafael stared at her face, trying to remember the last time he saw her like something dangerous. It had been born again. Before he reached into his pocket and pulled out the old rosary. Before she vanished. The one she'd given him years ago when he was just a man with too many sins and not enough forgiveness. He clenched it tightly. You should have stayed gone, he murmured again, though this time his voice trembled. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his soul pressing back. He rose, grabbed his coat, and headed for the door. Marco waited outside under the streetlight, smoke curling from his cigarette. Where to? Marco asked. Rafael's voice was low, steady, final. To remind the city who I am. And as he stepped into the rain, something in him shifted. Not rage, not grief, but something deeper. A purpose too old to die. The streets would learn again what it meant to cross Rafael De Luca. But for now, he let the rain wash over him, washing away everything except the memory of her voice and the promise he had just made in silence. Sometimes, vengeance isn't born from anger. It's born from love, twisted by loss. If you've ever done something out of love that changed everything, tell me below what it cost you. And if this story has your heart racing already, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. We're building something powerful together, one story at a time. That night, Palermo slept unaware that by morning, 8 men would vanish without a trace. The next morning came heavy and gray, the kind of dawn that didn't bring peace but warning. Palermo looked half awake, half guilty, as if the whole city had overheard what Rafael De Luca swore to do the night before. Inside the safe house, the air was thick with silence and antiseptic. Lucia stirred on the couch, the bandages clean, but her eyes clouded. When she tried to sit up, pain flared through her side, sharp as memory. Rafael stood by the window, back turned, coat still damp from the night. He hadn't slept. His reflection in the glass looked like someone he used to know but didn't like anymore. "Why am I still here?" she asked quietly. He didn't answer. The question wasn't really for him. It was for the universe that had never given her a choice. "Because," he said finally, "I need to know who did this." She let out a weak laugh. "And then what? You'll kill them." He turned. His voice was calm, too calm. "I'll make sure they remember her name before they stop breathing." Lucia's throat tightened. "This isn't saving me, Rafael. This is destroying what's left of you." He walked toward her, slow and deliberate. "You don't understand. They used you to get to me. You're not collateral. You're the message they sent. Now I'm sending mine back." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. "Not this time. You promised me once that you'd never go back to that man." He paused for a moment. "And you promised me once that you'd stay safe." The silence between them cracked like glass. Marco entered, his face pale, holding a folded piece of paper. "We got names, boss." Rafael took it without hesitation. His eyes scanned the list, recognizing every name but one. "They were the same men who sold intel to Rossi last year," Marco said. "They're working under a new handler now, someone called Vanetti." Rafael's jaw tightened. "He was supposed to be dead." "Supposed to," Marco said. Lucia looked between them, her pulse quickening. "You can't go after him alone." "I'm not going alone," Rafael said, putting on his gloves. "I'm taking the whole city with me." He turned to leave, but her hand caught his wrist. "If you go down this road again, there won't be anything left of you to save." He looked at her, really looked. "Then let it be for something that mattered." She wanted to say more, but the words got lost somewhere between fear and love. He pulled away gently, as if afraid of breaking something too fragile to touch. Outside, the car engine started, a low growl beneath the rain. Marco waited behind the wheel, the city's map spread across the dashboard. "You sure about this, boss? It's been years since Vanetti's name came up." Rafael adjusted his cuffs. "Some ghosts don't die. They just wait to be invited back." The drive through Palermo was a blur of gray buildings and flashing lights reflected in puddles. Every street corner carried a whisper of the past. Every window felt like an eye, watching him return to the man he had promised to bury. When they reached the outskirts of the city, Rafael got out alone. The old warehouse stood abandoned by everyone except memory. He walked through the broken doors and into the dark. The air smelled of metal and dust. His footsteps echoed like accusations. A voice came from the shadows. "Didn't think I'd see the great De Luca crawling back to this place." Rafael didn't flinch. "I came to finish what I should have years ago." Vanetti stepped forward, his face older, but his eyes still full of poison. "You always had a weakness for women. That's what makes you easy to find." "Touch her again," Rafael said softly, "and you'll pray I forget your name." Vanetti smirked. "You won't kill me. You need to know who paid me to find her." The words hung in the air like a loaded gun. Rafael didn't move. "Who?" "Someone you trust more than yourself." Before he could respond, the sound of footsteps filled the space. 3 men behind him, guns drawn. The flash of light was brief, but enough. Rafael turned, 1 shot, 2 bodies down. The third screamed, then silence. Vanetti tried to run, but Rafael was faster. He slammed him against the wall, the barrel of the gun pressed to his throat. "Say the name." Vanetti laughed, blood spilling from his mouth. "You'll find out soon enough. She's not as innocent as she looks." The gun went off before he finished. Outside, the rain came harder. washing away everything but the smell of gunpowder. Rafael stood still, chest heaving, eyes empty. He had the answers he came for, just not the ones he expected. By the time he returned to the safe house, dawn was breaking again. The world outside looked cleaner, but it was a lie. Lucia was sitting by the window, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. Her eyes lifted the moment he entered. "What did you do?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. His hands were still trembling. She saw it in his face, the violence, the regret, the truth he was trying to hide. "Tell me," she said, her voice shaking. "They said you weren't just a target," he whispered. "They said you knew." "Knew what? Who sent them?" Her breath caught. The silence stretched between them like a blade. "Rafael, I don't—" But the look in his eyes made her stop. He wasn't accusing. He was remembering. The doctor. The night she disappeared. The call she never explained. It all began to fit, piece by piece, in a way that made her heart break. "You think I betrayed you," she said softly. He didn't respond. Her voice rose, trembling. "After everything I did, everything I lost, how could you think I'd ever be part of that?" "Because," he said quietly, "the only people who ever get that close to me are the ones trying to end me." The pain in her eyes was almost worse than the bullet that had nearly killed her. She stood, her legs weak but steady. "You saved my life," she said, "but you just killed whatever was left of us." He looked away, unable to face her. Outside, thunder rolled again, as if the sky refused to let the night end. Lucia moved toward the door, her voice breaking. "You said once that love doesn't fix people. It destroys them. Maybe you were right." The door slammed, leaving him alone with the echo of his own choices. He sank into the chair she had just left, her scent still lingering in the air. On the table lay the blood-stained rosary, the same one she had returned to him. He stared at it, realizing for the first time that redemption doesn't come from saving others. It comes from forgiving yourself. But forgiveness was something he never learned to do. Outside, the streets began to wake. The city would hear rumors soon. Vanetti dead, his men gone, silence spreading like wildfire. And somewhere in that silence, a woman walked alone through the rain, wondering if love could ever survive the ruin it left behind. If this story has already broken something inside you, tell me what part hit hardest. And if you want to see how far Rafael will go when the truth finally breaks him, subscribe now and stay with us. We're just getting started. Because by tomorrow, Palermo won't look the same, and neither will he. The rain had eased, but the sky remained heavy, bruised by clouds. The city seemed quieter that morning, as if holding its breath. Inside the safe house, the air was thick with the smell of smoke and regret. Lucia hadn't returned. Her absence lingered like a ghost in every corner, on the couch where she once lay, in the empty glass by the window, in the silence that followed Rafael wherever he went. He hadn't slept. The whiskey bottle on the table was half empty, and so was he. Marco entered quietly, carrying a file. "We found something, boss." Now Rafael didn't look up. "What now?" "It's not about Vanetti. It's about her." That word alone made him raise his head. "Lucia." Marco nodded and set the file down. "The night she disappeared 2 years ago, she didn't just vanish. She went into hiding under a different name, worked at a private clinic in Milan for a man named Federico Rossi." Rafael's expression darkened. "Rossi, the same one who ran weapons through our ports before you shut him down." A muscle twitched in Rafael's jaw. "Keep talking." "She was forced to treat someone connected to him. We don't know who yet, but there's more. 2 days before she was shot, a payment hit her account from a bank we traced back to Rossi's lawyer." He took the file, staring at the records. "You think she was working for him?" "I think," Marco said carefully. "Someone made it look that way." The words burned in his chest. Every instinct told him not to believe it, but instincts had betrayed him before. He closed the file, his voice low. "Find her. Boss, she could be anywhere." Then start with the places I broke. Marco hesitated. And if she doesn't want to be found? Rafael's eyes hardened. Everyone wants to be found, even when they say they don't. He watched Marco leave, then sat back, the sound of the rain returning in the distance. He picked up the rosary again, rolling the beads between his fingers. It felt colder now. Outside, Palermo began to stir. Shops opened, children shouted in the streets, and for a moment the world looked normal. But beneath that calm, something was shifting. Across town, Lucia stood at the edge of a bridge overlooking the water. Her wound still hurt when she breathed, but not as much as what sat inside her chest. The rain had dampened her hair, turning the strands of dark blonde to gold under the pale morning light. She looked down at the reflection of the city on the river. The surface rippled, distorting the skyline, like memory refusing to stay still. A woman's voice startled her. "You shouldn't be out here." Lucia turned. Dr. Lanza's assistant, Sophia, approached with an umbrella. "He said you'd come here." Lucia tried to smile. "I needed to see something that wasn't broken." Sophia stepped closer. "You're lucky he found you." Lucia looked away. "Lucky isn't the word I'd use. He's not the man people say he is," Sophia said softly. Lucia's voice trembled. "No, he's worse, because he still believes he can be saved." The sound of a car stopping made both women turn. Marco stepped out, umbrella in hand. His tone was firm but not cruel. "He's looking for you." Lucia's heart sank. "I know. He won't stop until you talk to him." She hesitated, the rain falling harder again. "Then I'll talk, but not where he can hide behind the night." When Rafael saw her again, it was in the daylight, the kind of light that doesn't forgive. She stood in the middle of his courtyard, her eyes defiant but tired. He stepped forward slowly, as if afraid she'd disappear again. "You shouldn't have left," he said. "You shouldn't have made me." They stared at each other, the distance between them filled with everything they never said. He gestured toward the chair across from him. "Sit. I didn't come to obey you." "Then tell me the truth." She hesitated, then exhaled. 2 years ago I was working under a different name. Rossi found out I once treated you. He said if I didn't help him save his man, he'd kill my sister." Rafael froze. "You never told me you had family." "I didn't," she whispered. "Not anymore." The words hit him harder than any bullet. "He forced me to send information, routes, shipments, schedules, things that made your men targets. I tried to stop him, but by the time I could, they already had what they wanted." Rafael ran a hand through his hair. "Why didn't you come to me?" "Because you would have killed them, and I couldn't have more blood on my hands." He laughed bitterly. "You think I needed permission. I think you needed to remember what it means to have a soul." He looked at her, pain and fury mixing like storm clouds. "You think saving lives makes you clean? Every person I've killed had a reason. Every sin I carry has a name. Then maybe it's time you stop naming them." He stepped closer. "You don't get to forgive me." I'm not forgiving you," she said quietly. "I'm forgiving myself for loving someone who believed violence was love." That broke something inside him. He turned away, fists clenched. "You want me to stop? Fine, but I can't undo what's already been done." She moved closer, her voice barely a whisper. "Then at least don't become what they made you." The words hung between them like a lifeline neither dared to grab. Outside, the first siren of the day echoed faintly. Marco appeared in the doorway, face pale. "Boss, we've got a problem." Rafael turned sharply. "What now?" "They hit one of our trucks. The men guarding it, they're gone." Lucia's face drained of color. "Rossi." "No," Marco said, his voice lower. "Rossi's dead. Someone else took over." Rafael felt the room tilt. "Who?" Marco hesitated. "We don't know yet, but they left a message." He handed Rafael a folded note wet from the rain. In bold black ink, one sentence bled through the paper. "You can't save what was never yours." Rafael stared at it, his pulse pounding. Lucia's voice trembled. "They're not after me anymore." He looked up. "Then who?" She swallowed. "You." The moment shattered. Outside, thunder rolled again, closer this time. Rafael crushed the note in his fist, the ink smearing across his hand like blood. He didn't know who was coming, but he knew what they wanted, and he was ready to burn Palermo to find out. If you felt that silence before the storm, tell me what you think will happen when the truth finally explodes. And if this story is keeping you here, subscribe now. Help us reach our first 100 voices before the next scene begins. Because the next time they meet, love and revenge will finally look the same. The storm returned that night as if the sky itself wanted to wash the city clean of its sins. Lightning flashed over the harbor, painting Palermo in shades of gold and gray. Somewhere beneath that storm, Rafael De Luca's empire trembled, not from fear, but from the silence that came before the fall. He sat in his office, the lights dim, a single cigarette burning between his fingers. The note still lay on the desk, its words smeared by the rain, but still sharp enough to cut. You can't save what was never yours. He had read it 100 times and still didn't know if it was meant for him or for her. Marco entered without knocking. We traced the handwriting. It's not Rossi's men. Rafael didn't look up. Then whose is it? Marco hesitated. It matches documents signed by someone named Matteo D'Amato. Rafael froze. Matteo? Your father's lawyer, Marco finished quietly. The one who disappeared after your trial. Rafael leaned back, the cigarette burning to ash. That was 15 years ago. I know, but it looks like he didn't disappear. He changed sides. Rafael stood, pacing slowly. D'Amato handled every deal my father ever made. Every betrayal that followed started with his pen. He's the one moving against you now, Marco said. He took Rossi's roots, your contacts, your informants. He's building something. Then he's building his grave. Marco hesitated again. Boss, there's more. D'Amato's been seen meeting with someone at the Milan clinic, the same one Lucia worked at. That name stopped everything. Rafael's voice dropped to a whisper. Say that again. She wasn't working alone, Marco said carefully. Whoever helped her disappear back then might be tied to him. Rafael turned toward the window, the reflection of his own face fractured by the lightning outside. Find her. She's not answering calls. Then find whoever answers for her. When Marco left, Rafael stood alone in the dark, listening to the thunder roll across the city. He didn't believe in fate, but sometimes fate didn't ask for belief. It just came for you. Across town, Lucia was sitting in a small cafe near the river, her coat still wet from the rain. The bell above the door chimed as a man entered, thin, elegant, carrying the kind of smile that didn't belong in places like this. Lucia, he said softly, removing his hat. It's been a long time. Her blood turned cold. Matteo. He sat across from her, uninvited. You look tired. Life with De Luca will do that to a person. I shouldn't be seen with you, she said. Oh, come now, Matteo replied, stirring his coffee. If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't have woken up this morning. Her hands trembled under the table. What do you want? He smiled. The same thing I've always wanted. Balance. She laughed bitterly. You mean control. Control, he said, leaning forward, is what keeps chaos from swallowing us. De Luca doesn't understand that. He never did. He thinks power is built on loyalty, but loyalty fades. Fear doesn't. She shook her head. You're using me to get to him. Not at all, Matteo said. I'm saving you from the storm he's about to unleash. When he learns the truth, you'll wish you'd left this city when you had the chance. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. What truth? He smiled again, cruel and calm. You weren't the only one Rossi blackmailed. The hit that nearly killed him years ago. It wasn't ordered by Rossi. It was ordered by his father's lawyer, by me. And do you know who delivered the information that made it possible? She shook her head slowly, dread sinking in. He whispered, You did. Her breath caught. You're lying. I wish I were, Matteo said, standing. You didn't know, of course, but you gave me everything. You were young, desperate, trying to save him, and now you'll watch him destroy himself for a past neither of you can fix. Lucia stood abruptly. If you come near him, I'll... He raised a hand. You'll what? Warn him? He already knows I'm alive. The question is, does he know what you did? She froze, her throat closing. Matteo smiled, tipping his hat. When you see him, tell him I'm waiting. Tell him the debt isn't paid. He walked out into the rain, leaving her trembling. Lucia stayed there for a long time, the sound of rain against the windows filling the silence he left behind. Then she stood, her decision made. Back at the safe house, Rafael was standing by the fire when Marco returned. We found her, Marco said. She's coming. Rafael didn't move. Alone? She insisted. When Lucia entered, her face was pale, eyes red from tears or rain. He couldn't tell which. She looked at him like someone standing on the edge of something dangerous. I saw him, she said quietly. Who? Matteo D'Amato. The name hit the air like a curse. Rafael's voice was low. What did he tell you? That you already know. Then tell me anyway. She took a breath. He said I gave him information years ago, that I helped him plan the hit that almost killed you. Rafael didn't speak. The fire crackled behind him, the only sound in the room. I didn't know, she said, stepping closer. He tricked me. I thought I was helping one of your men. I didn't know it was him. He looked up slowly. Lucia, I buried 8 men that night. 8. Tears welled in her eyes. I know. I killed 20 more to find the one who gave the order. I thought it was Rossi. I thought it ended there. It wasn't me, she whispered. You have to believe that. He stared at her, the stormlight flickering across his face. I don't have to believe anything. The words cut sharper than any blade. She took another step forward, desperate. Then, at least, let me prove it. How? I know where he's hiding. Let me go with you. He almost laughed. You think I need help? I think you need the truth, she said, and I'm the only one who can get you close enough to hear it. He studied her for a long moment. There was something in her eyes, fear, yes, but also courage, the kind that doesn't come from strength, but from exhaustion. Finally, he said, You'll stay behind me at all times. She nodded. You have my word. He turned toward Marco. Prepare the car. Boss, this is a trap. Everything's a trap, Rafael said. The trick is surviving it. The old theater on Via Garibaldi had been closed for years. Its facade was cracked, windows boarded, but light flickered faintly inside when they arrived. Rafael stepped through the doors first, gun drawn, Lucia close behind. The air smelled of mold and rain. Stage curtains swayed like ghosts. Stay here, he whispered, but she didn't. They moved deeper inside until a voice echoed from the stage. I was wondering when you'd come. Matteo stepped out from behind the curtain, dressed in gray, unarmed but far from harmless. Rafael raised the gun. You should have stayed dead. Death is overrated, Matteo said. But guilt, that's eternal. Tell me why, Rafael demanded. Why? Matteo smiled. Because your father trusted me more than his own blood. Because he built an empire and left it to a boy who thought mercy was strength. You destroyed him. I saved him from himself. And now I'll save you the same way. Rafael fired. The bullet missed by an inch, shattering the marble column behind Matteo. You can't kill me until you hear what she's hiding, Matteo said. Lucia froze. Don't listen to him. But Matteo's eyes glimmered. Ask her, Rafael. Ask her who called me the night your convoy route was leaked. Ask her who begged me to make sure you survived, even if it meant blood. Rafael turned, his pulse hammering. What is he talking about? Lucia's voice broke. I thought they were going to kill you. I made a deal. I told him where you'd be, but begged him to keep you alive. I didn't know he'd turn it into a massacre. Rafael's breath caught, the weight of every word pressing down like chains. You traded their lives for mine. I traded death for a chance, she whispered, for you. The room spun. The sound of rain outside grew louder, relentless. Matteo smiled. Now you see, De Luca. She didn't betray you out of hate. She did it out of love. That's the cruelest kind of loyalty. Rafael's hand trembled on the gun. He looked at Lucia, at her trembling lips, her tear-streaked face, and saw not betrayal, but a reflection of himself. He lowered the weapon slightly. "You were supposed to save me, not damn me. I didn't know how else to stop them," she said. "I didn't know who you were becoming." Before he could answer, Matteo clapped slowly. "Touching. But this isn't love. This is survival." He pulled a small device from his pocket. "And every building in your district has one just like it. You built this city on foundations of blood, Rafael. I'm just returning it to dust." Lucia screamed as Matteo pressed the detonator. The explosion didn't come from the theater. It came from somewhere outside, near the docks. The ground shook violently. Glass shattered. Rafael threw himself over her as debris fell. Smoke filled the air. Sirens began to wail in the distance. When the shaking stopped, Matteo was gone. Only his laughter echoed in the ruins. Lucia coughed, gripping Rafael's sleeve. "He's going after the rest of your men." Rafael stood, coughing through the dust. "No, he's going after the city." He looked out through the broken window. Flames lit up the horizon. The docks were burning. Marco's voice crackled through the radio. "Boss, half the South District's gone. We've got casualties. Dozens!" Rafael clenched his jaw, his voice calm but deadly. "Get everyone to safety and find him." Lucia tried to stand but stumbled. He caught her. For a moment, their eyes met through the smoke and chaos. "You still think love can save us?" he asked. She shook her head. "No, but maybe it can stop you from burning everything left." He didn't answer. He just looked out at the fire spreading through the night, realizing that what had started as vengeance was now something much worse. And this time, he wasn't sure who he was trying to save anymore. "If you felt your pulse rise with the fire, tell me what you think Rafael should do next. Should he choose vengeance or redemption? Comment your answer and help this story find its way to our first 100 subscribers. Every voice counts in this storm, because next time the city won't just bleed, it will remember. The city was still burning when Rafael De Luca walked out of the theater. Smoke rose over the harbor, turning the dawn into something darker than night. The streets were chaos, sirens, shouts, the smell of diesel and ash. He didn't flinch. He had seen cities fall before. This time it was personal. Marco's voice crackled through the radio. "Boss, we've lost contact with the east side. Matteo's men hit 3 more warehouses. Lock down the docks," Rafael ordered. "No one in or out. And Lucia? She stays with me." He looked over his shoulder. Lucia stood behind him, pale and trembling, the firelight dancing in her eyes. "You don't have to come," he said quietly. "I'm the reason this started," she replied. "I'm not leaving until it ends." Her words should have angered him, but instead they anchored him. For a brief moment he remembered the woman who once saved his life in a hospital lit by gunfire. The same hands that stitched his wound were now shaking from fear and guilt. They drove through the wreckage of Palermo, past burning trucks and empty streets. The city felt hollow, like a ghost trying to remember its name. Rain began to fall again, hissing against the flames. At the checkpoint, Marco met them with a grim expression. "We found something," he said, handing Rafael a folded map. "Matteo's not hiding anymore. He's moving toward the old refinery on the coast." Rafael traced the line on the map. "That's where my father used to move shipments." "Exactly," Marco said. "It's symbolic. He's making this personal." Rafael looked at him. "Then we'll make it final." He turned to Lucia. "You stay in the car." She shook her head. "If he sees me, he might hesitate. And if I see him, I won't." They stared at each other, the air thick with something between a fury and love. Neither said what they were really thinking, that the next time one of them turned away, it might be forever. They reached the refinery before dawn. The air smelled of oil and sea salt, the kind of place where ghosts came to hide. Metal towers loomed against the storm, their shapes flickering in the lightning. Rafael stepped out first, gun drawn, boots splashing in shallow puddles. Lucia followed, clutching her coat. every step slower than the one before. Inside, echoes filled the massive halls. Chains clinked somewhere in the dark. "Mateo," Rafael's voice cut through the storm. "You wanted balance. Come and get it." A laugh echoed from above, calm and cruel. Still loud De Luca, still trying to turn rage into reason. Mateo appeared on a catwalk, dressed in black, a gun in one hand, a detonator in the other. "You came alone?" he asked. "Not quite," Rafael said, motioning toward the shadows. From the far side of the refinery, Marco and his men emerged, weapons ready. The air crackled with tension. Mateo smiled. "You think numbers save you? You've never understood power." He pressed a button and explosions thundered through the lower levels. The ground shook violently. Flames erupted from the pipes. Lucia screamed as a metal beam crashed nearby. Rafael grabbed her, pulling her behind cover. "Get her out," he shouted to Marco. "No," she said, gripping his arm. "If you kill him, you become him." Rafael's eyes met hers, wild and desperate. "If I don't, we both die." She looked at him, tears cutting through the dirt on her face. "Then at least don't die as the man he created." For a heartbeat, he hesitated. It was enough. Mateo fired. The bullet grazed Rafael's shoulder, spinning him sideways. Lucia screamed his name, rushing toward him as Marco's men returned fire. Mateo retreated deeper into the refinery, vanishing into the smoke. Rafael pressed his hand to the wound, blood seeping through his shirt. "It's nothing," he grunted, standing again. "Please," she begged. "You can't chase him like this." He looked at her, a half-smile ghosting across his lips. "I've been chasing him my whole life." He staggered forward, gun in hand, disappearing into the orange glow. Lucia turned to Marco. "We have to stop him." Marco shook his head. "He's already gone." But she didn't listen. Inside, the refinery was an inferno. Shadows danced across the walls like old memories refusing to die. Lucia followed the echoes, gunfire, footsteps, a single voice shouting through the roar of flames. "Come out, Mateo." Rafael's silhouette appeared through the smoke, limping slightly, gun raised. Mateo's voice came from above. "Your father made this city bleed for power. You'll make it burn for pride." Rafael's eyes narrowed. "My father built his empire on lies. I'll bury it with truth." He fired again, hitting the railing near Mateo. Sparks flew. The older man stumbled, dropping the detonator. Lucia reached them just as Mateo aimed his gun again. "Rafael!" she shouted. Rafael turned. Mateo fired. The shot echoed through the hall, but Lucia moved first. The bullet hit her. She fell back against Rafael's arms, her breath catching. He dropped the gun, holding her as if he could stop the bleeding with his hands alone. "No," he whispered. "Stay with me." Her lips trembled. It had to end. Somehow. Mateo watched from above, stunned for a moment. Then Rafael looked up, and whatever humanity was left in him vanished. He grabbed his gun and fired. Once. Twice. Mateo fell from the catwalk, hitting the ground hard, his body twisting before going still. Silence followed, broken only by the fire crackling around them. Lucia's breathing slowed. "You've found your revenge," she whispered. "Don't lose your soul with it." He shook his head. "You saved me again." Her hand slipped from his cheek, falling limp. Rafael stared at her for a long moment, then pressed his forehead against hers. "Not like this," he said softly. "Not again." Marco burst in moments later, coughing through the smoke. "Boss, we have to go." Rafael didn't move. "Take her first." Marco hesitated, then nodded, signaling two men forward. They lifted Lucia carefully. Rafael turned one last time to Mateo's body. "You were right," he said quietly. "Fear doesn't fade, but love, it haunts." They left the refinery as it collapsed behind them, flames swallowing everything that had once been power, loyalty, and pride. Outside, the rain came harder, steam rising from the ground. Rafael stood in the downpour, soaked and silent, watching the fire die. Marco approached slowly. "What now?" Rafael didn't answer for a long time. Finally he said, Now I pay the debt. To who? He looked toward the ambulance lights in the distance. To her. The rain fell harder, erasing the blood on his hands but not the weight behind it. The city burned behind him, and for the first time in years, Rafael De Luca had no plan, only the unbearable silence of survival. If this part left you breathless, tell me in the comments what you think he should do next. Should he surrender or rebuild from the ashes? And if you want to see where Rafael's path of love and ruin will lead, subscribe now. Help us reach our first 100 voices before the final storm begins. Because next time, even the rain won't be enough to wash away what's coming. The rain didn't stop for 3 days. Palermo drowned in its own smoke, the city mourning what it couldn't name. The refinery fire was finally contained, but the damage went far beyond the ruins. Entire districts were gone, lives erased, and somewhere in the chaos, Rafael De Luca sat in silence for the first time in his life. The hospital was quiet except for the sound of machines and rain against the windows. The scent of disinfectant clung to the air like guilt. Lucia hadn't woken since the night of the explosion. He stood by her bedside, his shirt still faintly stained with her blood. The nurses had stopped trying to move him hours ago. He hadn't spoken to anyone, not Marco, not the doctors, not even himself. Her face looked peaceful now, as if the storm never touched her. But every breath she took through that fragile rhythm of the machine felt like a blade scraping against his chest. Dr. Lanza entered quietly. She's stable, but it's too soon to know what damage was done. Rafael didn't turn around. Will she wake up? I don't know, the doctor said softly. But I do know she'll need peace, no more chaos. And Rafael gave a small, broken smile. I don't know how to give her that. The doctor looked at him for a long time. Then maybe start by forgiving yourself. When he left, Rafael sat beside the bed and took Lucia's hand. It was warm, alive, human, something he didn't deserve to touch. He whispered, "You once told me love doesn't fix people. Maybe you were right. Maybe it just teaches us how to live with what's broken." Outside, lightning split the sky again, illuminating the hospital walls in pale flashes. He closed his eyes, letting the light burn through him. The next morning, Marco arrived. His eyes were bloodshot, his voice rough. "The city's falling apart, boss. The council wants answers. They're calling it terrorism." Rafael finally looked at him. "They're not wrong. What do we do?" Rafael took a deep breath. "You do nothing. I'm done." Marco blinked. "Done? I started a war that never should have existed. I burned what was left of my father's empire for a promise I couldn't keep." Marco shook his head. "That's not who you are. That's exactly who I am." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to Marco. Inside was a key. "The safe under the old club," Rafael said. "Everything's in there. Cash, deeds, names. Burn it all." Marco stared at him. "You can't walk away from this life." Rafael's voice was calm. "I'm not walking away. I'm burying it." He turned back toward Lucia, his hand resting gently on hers. "If she wakes up, tell her I'm sorry." Marco's throat tightened. "Where will you go?" Rafael's eyes met his. "Where no one remembers my name." When Marco left, the room felt emptier. The machines hummed softly, the rain whispering against the glass like a secret. Rafael leaned down and kissed Lucia's forehead. "You saved me more times than I can count. Now I need to learn how to live without being saved." He stood and walked out without looking back. Outside, the streets were wet and empty. His black car was gone, confiscated, maybe destroyed. He didn't care. He walked instead, through alleys and markets, through places that once belonged to him. People stared but didn't speak. Even fear had grown tired. He ended up at the church by the harbor, the one his mother used to visit before the world turned cruel. The doors were half broken, the candles nearly burned out. He stepped inside, the echo of his footsteps mixing with the sound of waves crashing against the docks. He sat in the last pew. For a long time, he didn't say anything. Then his voice broke the silence. I killed men for loyalty. I destroyed lives for pride. And in the end, I lost the only thing that made me human. His voice echoed in the empty space. If you're listening, God, I'm not asking for mercy. Just make sure she opens her eyes. She deserves the peace I stole. The wind blew through the cracked windows, snuffing out the last candle. He took it as an answer. 3 days later, Lucia opened her eyes. The light hurt at first, bright and sharp. But then she saw the flowers on the bedside table, fresh, white lilies, and beside them, a folded note with her name on it. She sat up slowly, her body heavy, her breath unsteady. Her hand trembled as she opened the note. It was his handwriting. Lucia, you once told me that love isn't about saving someone. It's about standing beside them when the storm hits. You stood beside me long after I deserved it. If you're reading this, it means I finally learned to stop fighting what's already lost. I'm leaving the city, not because I'm running, but because I want to remember you as the reason I survived, not the reason I destroyed everything. Forgive me if you can. Forget me if you must. R. Tears blurred the ink. She pressed the letter to her chest, her breath shaking. Outside her room, Marco stood in the hallway. When she saw him, she whispered, "He's gone, isn't he?" Marco nodded. "He left last night. No one knows where." Lucia looked down at the note again. He never believed he could be saved. Marco sighed. Maybe he didn't need saving. Maybe he just needed someone to believe he could change. She smiled faintly. "Then we both failed." He shook his head. "Or maybe you didn't. He burned everything so she could live. That's something." She looked out the window. The rain had stopped. For the first time in months, sunlight broke through the clouds, reflecting on this. "I need to find him," she said. "Lucia, you almost died." "I know," she whispered. "That's why I can't waste what's left." Far from Palermo, Rafael sat in a small fishing boat drifting off the coast of Sardinia. The wind was cold, but it felt clean. He watched the horizon as the sun sank behind the water. He had no phone, no gun, no name. Just the rosary wrapped around his wrist and the letter he hadn't sent. The one meant for the woman sleeping in a hospital bed miles away. He pulled it from his pocket, unfolded it carefully, and read it one last time. "If I ever see you again, it will be because fate ran out of mercy." He let the paper slip from his hand, the wind carrying it across the waves until it disappeared. The sea was quiet, but his heart wasn't. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again. He whispered, "Maybe redemption isn't something you earn. Maybe it's something you chase until it kills you." He looked down at the rosary, the beads slick with seawater. He closed his eyes, listening to the rhythm of the waves, like a heartbeat that wasn't his. For the first time in years, he felt small, human, and that scared him more than death ever did. If this moment reached you, tell me what you felt when he finally walked away. Would you have forgiven him or followed him? Leave your thoughts below and help us reach our first 100 voices before the final reckoning begins. Because next time, the past will come for him and for her, and love will decide who survived. The sea was calm. The morning the world came looking for him again. Rafael De Luca had spent 6 months hiding on the island, his days stripped down to silence, salt, and routine. He lived in a small cottage overlooking the water, repairing nets for fishermen who didn't know his name, or maybe they did, and chose to forget it. He woke before sunrise as he always did, the sound of gulls calling through the mist. The scars on his shoulder still ached when the rain came, reminders of a life that refused to stay buried. He made coffee on the stove, the bitter smell filling the quiet room. On the table lay a folded newspaper, delivered every Sunday by a man who never asked questions. Rafael didn't read the papers anymore. He had learned that peace required ignorance, but that morning something made him look. The headline stretched across the front page. De Luca Syndicate returns, new blood in control. He froze, the cup halfway to his lips. The photo beneath it showed a black car, tinted windows, and the body of a man he recognized, one of his oldest lieutenants. The article claimed a new figure had taken over his former territories, someone ruthless, someone calling himself Il Fantasma, the ghost. He put the cup down, his hands trembling slightly. The name wasn't random, it was deliberate, a message to him. By noon, he was on the mainland. The ferry ride was silent, the horizon gray with storm clouds. He watched the waves break against the hull, each one carrying him closer to the city he'd sworn never to see again. Palermo had changed, or maybe it hadn't. The streets were cleaner, but the air was still thick with fear. The new regime had repainted the walls, but the blood beneath the paint hadn't dried. He walked through the markets where once his men collected dues. The sellers still looked away when they saw him, even after all this time. Ghosts didn't need introductions. He ended up outside the ruins of his father's old club. The sign was gone, but the building still stood, a hollow shell of glass and smoke. 2 men guarded the door. He didn't recognize them. When he approached, one stepped forward. Private property. Rafael's voice was calm. It used to be mine. The guard laughed. Then you must be the ghost everyone's talking about. Rafael smiled faintly. Not yet. The sound of gunfire broke the conversation. 1 shot. Quick. Clean. The guard fell, eyes wide in disbelief. The second man turned, but before he could raise his weapon, Rafael had already fired again. The door creaked open under his hand. Inside, the air smelled of whiskey and new money. A man sat at the bar, pouring himself a drink. He looked young, too young to be running anything with that name. "I was expecting you," the man said without turning. "Word travels fast when the dead come home." Rafael stepped closer. "You took my name." The man finally looked up. His eyes were dark, sharp, familiar. "No, De Luca, I reclaimed it. You abandoned it." "Who sent you?" The young man smiled. "You did." Rafael frowned. "I don't leave loose ends." "You left one," the man said. "My mother." The words hit him like a bullet. He studied the boy's face, the jawline, the expression, the fire behind the eyes. It wasn't possible, and yet it was. "Who are you?" he asked. "My name is Alessandro," the boy said. "And you're the man who killed my future." Rafael took a step back. "Lucia, she never told you," Alessandro said, standing. "She never wanted you to find out. You were too dangerous, too broken. She thought keeping me hidden would save me." His voice cracked slightly, the hatred barely holding itself together. But nothing stays hidden forever. Rafael's throat went dry. "Where is she?" "Gone," Alessandro said. "She left the city when you did. I stayed. Someone had to rebuild what you destroyed." "By killing?" "By surviving," Alessandro shot back. "You built this empire on fear, and when you walked away, all you left us was chaos, so I took it back. I gave Palermo a name it remembered how to fear." Rafael's voice lowered. "Fear isn't power." "No," Alessandro said coldly, "but it keeps people alive." They stood in silence, 2 generations divided by blood and consequence. Finally, Rafael said, "You're not ready for this life." "I was born into it," Alessandro replied, "and I'm better at it than you ever were." "Then you'll die faster than I did." The young man smiled. "Maybe, but not today." Gunfire erupted from the doorway. Rafael dove behind the bar as bullets shattered the bottles. Alessandro's men filled the room, shouting orders. Rafael fired twice, hitting 2 before rolling to cover. The boy shouted, "Stop! He's mine!" When the silence returned, the smell of gunpowder lingered. Rafael stood, his hand bleeding from shattered glass. "This isn't how it has to end." "It already ended," Alessandro said. "The day you left her." For the first time, Rafael saw it, the same pain in the boy's eyes that had haunted his own. Love turned to loss, loss turned to rage. He lowered his gun. "You think this name means something, but it's a curse. You can still walk away." Alessandro shook his head. "You taught me better than that." The boy turned and left with his men, the sound of his footsteps echoing like thunder. Rafael stood alone in the wreckage, blood dripping onto the floor. Outside, rain began to fall again. He looked at the sky and whispered, "Lucia, what have we done?" That night, he returned to his old safe house. It was empty except for dust and memories. On the table sat a photograph, one he didn't remember leaving. It was of Lucia, younger, holding a small child on her lap. He sank into the chair, staring at it until the world blurred. The child's eyes were his. Marco entered quietly behind him. "You saw him?" Rafael didn't look up. "He's her son." Marco hesitated. "Yours?" "Yes." The word broke something inside him. Marco sighed. "What are you going to do?" Rafael looked at the photo again. "What I should have done years ago. End it. Boss, he's blood." Rafael stood, tucking the photograph into his coat. "So was everyone I buried." Far across the city, Alessandro stood in front of a mirror, his reflection flickering in the light of the burning cigarette he held. He looked like his father, and that terrified him. His second in command entered quietly. "He's alive, isn't he?" Alessandro exhaled smoke. "For now." "What's the plan?" He crushed the cigarette in the ashtray. "We finish what he started. Then we bury the name De Luca for good." The rain outside grew heavier, drowning the city in gray. Back in the safe house, Rafael loaded his gun, the same one he swore never to use again. He looked at the photo one last time, then slipped it into his pocket. "Forgive me, Lucia," he whispered, "but I can't let him become me." Outside, lightning struck the harbor. The streets glistened with rain. Palermo waited, silent, trembling, its ghosts walking once more. If this twist shook you, tell me what you felt when Rafael realized who the ghost really was. And if you want to see how this story of blood and forgiveness unfolds, subscribe and stay close. We're building something unforgettable together. Because next time, father and son will stand face to face, and only one De Luca will walk away. The rain hadn't stopped since the night they met. It came down in sheets that blurred the city's edges, washing the blood from its streets, but not from its memory. Palermo was split now, half under Alessandro's control, half waiting for the old ghost to rise again. Rafael De Luca didn't want to rise. He wanted to disappear. But blood never asks what you want. It demands what you owe. He sat in the back of an abandoned church, the same one where he once begged for mercy. The candles flickered weakly, shadows trembling against the cracked stone. The photo of Lucia and the child lay in front of him. He'd memorized every detail, the smile she tried to hide, the way the boy clung to her dress. Marco entered quietly, his shoes echoing against the marble floor. "We found where he's staying," he said. Rafael didn't look up. "Where?" "The penthouse near the pier, guarded. He took in every man you left behind." Rafael closed his eyes. "Of course he did." "Are you sure you want to do this?" Marco asked. "He's family, family," Rafael said softly. "That word doesn't mean what it used to." Marco hesitated. "Then what does it mean now?" "It means the ones you hurt the most are always the ones who share your blood." He stood, sliding the photo into his pocket. "Get the car." The streets were quiet as they drove through the sleeping city. The rain had turned to mist, heavy and low. Lights reflected off puddles like ghosts watching from below. Marco parked a block away from the pier. "He'll see you coming," he warned. Rafael gave a faint smile. "Then I won't hide." He stepped out, walking alone through the fog. The sound of the sea mixed with the hum of generators from the ships nearby. The building loomed above him, modern, cold, glass walls glowing faintly blue. Inside, everything smelled new, too new, like money and arrogance. A guard moved toward him, gun drawn. Rafael moved faster. One punch to the throat, a twist of the wrist, silence. He took the elevator alone. Each floor beeped softly, marking the countdown to something inevitable. When the doors opened, Alessandro was waiting. No gun this time, no men, just him, standing by the window, the city burning faintly in the reflection. "You came," he said. Rafael stepped inside. "You made it impossible not to." Alessandro turned. "I was wondering what kind of man would kill his own name just to start over. Now, I know. It's the kind of man who runs from what he creates." "I didn't run," Rafael said quietly. "I left to save what was left of." "Save?" Alessandro laughed, sharp and bitter. "You call abandoning a woman and her child saving them?" "I didn't know," Rafael said. "If I had..." "You would have done what? Raised me in the same hell you built? Made me another soldier in your war?" "I would have tried," Rafael whispered. "That's all I ever knew how to do." Alessandro's expression flickered, the anger cracking just enough for something human to shine through. "She told me stories about you, said you were dangerous but kind, said you wanted out. She wasn't wrong, but you didn't leave for her," Alessandro said. "You left for yourself." Rafael took a step closer. "If that were true, I wouldn't be here now." The silence between them stretched, the city lights painting both their faces in blue and gold. Alessandro turned away. "You destroyed everything my mother loved, and then you made her love you anyway. That's your real crime." Rafael swallowed hard. "Where is she?" Alessandro's jaw tightened. "She left Palermo after the refinery burned. No one's heard from her since. Maybe she's dead. Maybe she's smart enough to stay gone." The words hit harder than any bullet. Rafael looked down, his voice rough. "She deserved peace. She deserved truth," Alessandro snapped. "But you don't know how to give that, do you?" He reached into his pocket and threw something across the floor, a small silver pendant. Lucia, the one Rafael had given her years ago. He picked it up slowly, fingers trembling. "Where did you get this?" "She left it at my door the night she vanished. Said one day I'd understand why she couldn't stay." Rafael stared at the pendant, its surface scratched, worn by time and tears. "She left because of me. She left because she was tired." Alessandro's tired of waiting for you to choose something other than vengeance. Rafael's voice lowered. "And now you've become everything she feared. Maybe that's what it takes to survive." Alessandro said. "Maybe it's what she would have wanted." "No," Rafael said firmly. "She wanted you to be free, and all you did was chain yourself to my sins." Alessandro's eyes flashed. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to become you?" Rafael stepped closer, his voice calm but sharp. "You already are." For a moment, neither moved. The sound of the storm filled the room, wind pressing against the windows. Then Alessandro spoke again, his voice quieter. "Why did you come back, Rafael? To stop me? To save me?" Rafael hesitated. "To see if there's anything left worth saving." Alessandro smiled sadly. "You're too late." He turned toward the window again. "The city's already mine." "And what will you do with it?" Rafael asked. "What you couldn't. I'll rebuild it in my name. Not as your son, not as your ghost. As me." Rafael nodded slowly. "Then you'll need to destroy me first." Alessandro looked at him. "Maybe I already have." Before Rafael could respond, the building lights flickered. An explosion echoed from the lower floors, small but close. Both men turned. Marco's voice crackled through Rafael's earpiece. "Boss, the place is wired. He set you up." Rafael looked at Alessandro. "What did you do?" Alessandro's expression shifted, guilt flickering across his face. "It wasn't me. Someone else moved before I could stop them." The floor trembled. Glass shattered. Fire burst through the hallway. Rafael grabbed him, pulling him to the ground as the ceiling collapsed. Smoke filled the air. They crawled toward the emergency stairs, coughing, half blind. The building groaned above them, metal screaming under the pressure. When they finally reached the exit, the night exploded behind them. Rafael fell to his knees on the pavement, gasping for air. Alessandro stood a few feet away, staring at the burning tower. His expression was unreadable. Rafael rose slowly, blood on his face. "You wanted to rule ashes?" Alessandro turned to him, eyes reflecting the fire. "No, I wanted to end the story." Rafael shook his head. "You can't end what you don't understand." "Then teach me." Alessandro said quietly. Rafael looked at him, truly looked, at the man who was both his greatest failure and his last chance at redemption. I can't teach you what I never learned, he said, but I can show you what it cost. The sirens wailed in the distance. Firefighters shouted orders. The sky glowed orange. Alessandro took a step closer. So what happens now? Rafael looked back at the burning tower. Now, we find out who lit the match. Another enemy? He nodded slowly. Always. For the first time, Alessandro didn't argue. They stood side by side, father and son, watching the empire of ghosts turn to flame. If this moment broke something inside you, tell me what you felt when blood met blood. Would you have forgiven your father or destroyed him? Comment your answer and help us reach our first 100 voices before the final reckoning begins. Because next time they'll learn who really started the fire and what it takes to put it out. The city woke to ashes. Columns of smoke drifted over Palermo like old ghosts rising for judgment. The tower fire dominated the headline. Dozens injured, 4 dead, and 1 truth buried beneath the rubble. The papers called it gang warfare. The streets called it justice. Rafael De Luca called it unfinished business. He stood at the edge of the pier, watching the blackened water lap against the stones. The air smelled of salt and soot. Behind him, footsteps approached, the same rhythm he'd known since the first night he held a gun. Alessandro stopped a few feet away. They'll say we did it, he said. They always do, Rafael replied. It doesn't bother you? Rafael turned slightly. If I spent my life caring what they said, I'd be buried twice over. Alessandro crossed his arms, his tone sharper. You're calm for a man who just lost everything again. Rafael gave a faint smile. You don't lose what was never yours. The silence between them stretched, broken only by the wind against the water. Finally, Alessandro said, I checked the security feeds from the tower before it went down. There was someone else there, a man. He bypassed my guards and planted the charges. And I describe him, Rafael said. I couldn't. The footage was wiped 5 minutes after the explosion. But one thing survived, the sound of his voice. He called himself Rossi's echo. Rafael's eyes darkened. Rossi's men are dead. Apparently not all of them. Rafael looked out at the horizon. Then he's coming for what's left, which is us. They met Marco that afternoon at an abandoned railway yard. The smell of rust and oil lingered in the air. Marco handed Rafael a file. We tracked the voice Alessandro found. It belongs to a man named Enzo Ferri, ex-military, worked security for Rossi before the collapse, disappeared 2 years ago. Where is he now? Rafael asked. Running shipments through the North Dock, same routes your father used to control. Rafael glanced at Alessandro. He's rebuilding from our ruins. And he's doing it fast, Marco said. Half the city's already paying him protection. The other half's too scared to speak your name. Rafael closed the file. Then we remind them who we are. Alessandro tensed. We? Rafael met his gaze. You want your city back? Then earn it. But this time we do it right. Marco frowned. Right doesn't keep you alive. Neither does running, Rafael said. And I've done enough of that. Night fell heavy over the docks. The sound of engines echoed across the water. Ships came and went, lights cutting through the mist. Rafael and Alessandro moved through the shadows, silent, precise. The warehouse ahead glowed faintly under the lamps. 2 guards stood by the door. A distraction was all they needed. Rafael picked up a piece of scrap metal and threw it into the distance. The clang drew 1 guard away. Alessandro moved quickly, pulling the other into the dark. A knife pressed to his throat. A brief struggle, then silence. They entered through the side door. Inside, crates were stacked high, marked with Rossi's old insignia. The smell of gasoline hung thick in the air. Alessandro ran his hand over one of the boxes. Weapons. Enough to start another war. Rafael scanned the floor. Or finish one. From deeper inside, voices echoed. 3 men arguing. Rafael motioned for silence and moved closer. The boss said to clear everything before dawn, one man said. He doesn't want the De Lucas finding out. Too late for that. Rafael murmured, stepping into the light. The men froze. In the next second, gunfire erupted. Bullets tore through the crates, sparks flying. Rafael ducked behind a pillar, returning fire. Alessandro dove for cover beside him, his breathing quick but steady. "Stay down," Rafael hissed. "I'm not a kid." "Then stop acting like one." Alessandro leaned out and fired 2 shots. Both hit. The warehouse fell silent again. Rafael stood, scanning the room. One man still moved, crawling toward a radio. Rafael grabbed him by the collar and pulled him up. "Where's Ferry?" The man spat blood. "Already gone." "Where?" "West side, old shipyard. But you're too late. He's expecting you." Rafael's grip tightened. "Good." He dropped the man and turned to Alessandro. "We finish this tonight." Alessandro's jaw clenched. "And then what?" "Then we stop pretending we're different." The shipyard sat on the edge of the city, half swallowed by fog. Rusted cranes loomed over the docks like giants frozen in mourning. The water was black and still. Rafael moved first, his steps silent against the wood. Alessandro followed close behind, his hand never leaving his gun. They reached the main warehouse. A single light burned inside. Rafael opened the door slowly. Ferry stood at the far end, his back turned, speaking into a phone. "Yes, both of them. No, he doesn't know yet." The line went dead. Ferry turned, smiling faintly. "I was wondering when you'd arrive." Rafael raised his gun. "You've got 5 seconds to explain why I shouldn't put you in the water." Ferry chuckled. "Because if you kill me now, you'll never find her." Alessandro froze. "Her?" Ferry's grin widened. "Lucia De Luca, alive, but not for long." Rafael's heart stopped. "You're lying." "Am I?" Ferry tossed a photograph onto the floor. It showed Lucia in a small coastal village, her eyes wary, a scar visible on her arm. Rafael knelt, his hand trembling. The photo was recent, weeks, maybe days old. "Where is she?" Ferry's voice was calm. "In the same place you left her last time, waiting for a man who doesn't deserve to find her." Rafael stepped closer. "Tell me where." Ferry smirked. "You always thought this was about power. It's not. It's about endings, and hers is yours." He pulled a small device from his pocket. Another detonator. Rafael fired before he could press it. The bullet tore through Ferry's shoulder, sending him crashing to the ground. Alessandro kicked the detonator away. "Who else knows she's alive?" Ferry coughed, blood staining his teeth. "Everyone who needs to, but not for long." Rafael crouched beside him, his voice low and dangerous. "Where is she?" Ferry laughed weakly. "Go back to your ghosts, De Luca. She's already one of them." Rafael stood, cold fury in his eyes. "You should have stayed silent." One shot ended it. The silence that followed was heavy. Alessandro looked at him. What if he was telling the truth? Rafael picked up the photograph. "Then I'll find her. And if it's a trap, then I'll die trying." He started toward the door, rain beginning to fall again, steady and cold. Alessandro called after him. "You can't keep doing this alone." Rafael turned. "I don't need to." The boy frowned. "You mean me?" "I mean us." They walked out together, the photo clutched in Rafael's hand. The rain fell harder, washing the blood from the dock, but not from their past. Somewhere out there, Lucia was waiting, or already gone. And in that space between hope and truth, redemption began to look a lot like love. If your heart is racing, tell me in the comments what you think Rafael will find when he reaches her. Will Lucia forgive him, or will the past finally catch up? And if you followed this far, subscribe now. Help us reach our first 100 voices before the story's final night falls, because next time, Rafael will find her, and not everyone will leave that place alive. The road to the coast stretched like a scar through the countryside. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried the weight of storms. Rafael drove in silence, the photograph of Lucia on the dashboard, her eyes following him like a memory he couldn't bury. Alessandro sat beside him, silent too. He had stopped asking questions somewhere along the way. Every mile brought them closer to an answer neither of them was ready for. The radio crackled with static, the kind that sounds like ghosts trying to speak. Rafael broke the silence first. "When this ends," he said quietly, "you leave Palermo." Alessandro frowned. "And go where?" "Anywhere it doesn't remember my name. That's not how blood works." Rafael's jaw tightened. "Then change your blood." They drove for hours past empty villages and fading light. When they finally reached the coast, the sky was bruised with twilight. Waves crashed against the cliffs below. A small house stood near the edge of the rocks. Its windows glowed faintly, warm against the cold sea. Rafael killed the engine. "Stay here," he said. Alessandro opened the door anyway. "I'm not letting you walk into another trap. This isn't yours to fix." "Neither was I," Alessandro said quietly. "But here we are." They walked together up the narrow path, the sea wind cutting through their coats. The closer they came, the heavier Rafael's chest felt. He stopped at the door, hand hovering over the wood. For the first time in years, he was afraid, not of dying, but of what he might find living. He knocked once, silence, then footsteps. The door opened. Lucia stood there. Time hadn't been kind, but it hadn't won either. Her hair was shorter, streaked with silver. A thin scar traced her temple, but her eyes, those same green eyes, held the same mix of fire and forgiveness that once made him believe he could be better. For a long moment, neither spoke. Finally, she whispered, "You're late." Rafael's voice broke. "I got lost." A small, tired smile. "You always did." He stepped closer. "They said you were dead. They said the same about you." He exhaled, the weight of 100 nights leaving his lungs. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her gaze drifted past him, landing on Alessandro. "I see you found him." Rafael turned slightly. "You knew." "I knew someone would come for him. I just prayed it wouldn't be you." Alessandro's voice trembled. "Why did you hide?" Lucia looked at her son, her face softening. "Because love can't grow where guns sleep. I wanted at least one of you to have a life without blood." Rafael's throat tightened. "And yet, here we are. Because neither of you learned how to stop chasing ghosts." They stood in the doorway as the wind howled around them, the sea crashing below. Finally, Lucia said, "Come inside." The house was small, filled with the scent of salt and chamomile. A single lamp lit the room. On the table, an old record player played a song Rafael remembered from decades ago, a melody she used to hum when the world still felt possible. Lucia poured tea, her hands steady despite everything. "You look older," she said softly. "So do you. But you still carry the same eyes." He smiled faintly. "And you still read them too well." Alessandro stood near the window watching the sea. He looked out of place like a ghost inside someone else's dream. Lucia turned to him. "You shouldn't have come." He met her gaze. "I had to." "You're your father's son," she said. He almost flinched. "I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse." Lucia's voice softened. "It's a warning." Silence fell. The storm outside began to fade, leaving only the sound of waves against rock. Then Rafael spoke, his voice low. "There's a man named Ferry. He said you were in danger." Lucia looked down. "He found me months ago. Said he worked for someone who wanted to finish De Luca's story. I didn't believe him until the fire." Rafael clenched his fists. "He's dead now." Lucia's eyes met his. "Then it's truly over." "No," Alessandro said quietly. "It's never over. Not while people remember the name." Rafael turned to him. "Then forget it." "I can't," Alessandro said. "It's who I am." Lucia stood. "No, it's who your father was. You still have a chance to be something else." Rafael looked at her, his voice breaking. "And what about me?" Lucia's eyes softened. "You're still chasing forgiveness in the wrong direction." He swallowed hard. "Tell me how to find the right one." She stepped closer, placing her hand against his cheek. "Stop trying to fix what you broke. Just stop." Her touch was gentle, but her words cut deep. "I thought if I made things right, it would mean something," he said. "It does," she whispered, "but not to the dead." Outside, the wind rose again. Suddenly, headlights flared in the distance. The sound of engines roared closer. Rafael turned toward the window. Ferry wasn't working alone. Alessandro drew his gun. How many? Too many. Lucia's voice trembled. You can't fight here. Not again. Rafael looked at her. We don't have a choice. She stepped in front of him. Then promise me one thing. No more killing. He hesitated. I can't promise that. Then promise me you'll live. Her voice cracked on the last word. He nodded once. That I can try. The first shots shattered the window. Rafael pulled her down, shielding her with his body. Alessandro returned fire from the doorway, his aim sharp and fast. The night turned into chaos. Glass, smoke, thunder. Rafael dragged Lucia behind the table. Stay low. She grabbed his sleeve. Don't leave me again. He looked at her, the world collapsing around them, and said the only truth he had left. I never did. He moved into the storm, firing into the dark. Alessandro covered him from the stairs. 2 men fell, then 3. But there were more. Always more. The fight spilled outside, the rain returning, washing the blood into the sea. Alessandro shouted over the noise. They're retreating. Rafael turned and saw the flash. A single shot. Lucia screamed his name. He fell to his knees, the bullet tearing through his side. Alessandro ran to him, firing until the last man was gone. Then the silence came back, the heavy kind that means something has ended. Lucia knelt beside Rafael, her hands shaking as she pressed against the wound. Stay with me, she begged. He smiled faintly. You said that once before. Her tears fell onto his face. I can't lose you again. He reached for her hand. You won't. Not this time. Alessandro looked down, his voice breaking. We need to get him to a hospital. Rafael's hand gripped his wrist. No hospitals, no headlines, promise me. Why? Alessandro whispered. Because the name dies with me. Lucia sobbed. You don't have to. Yes, he said gently. I do. The rain softened, turning to mist. The sea whispered below. He looked at his son one last time. Don't become me. Become the man she believed I was. Alessandro's voice cracked. I don't know how. Rafael smiled weakly. You just start by forgiving. His hand fell limp. Lucia held him until the storm stopped. The sun rose quietly the next morning. The house stood half broken, the sea calm again. Alessandro buried his father near the cliffs where the waves could carry his name away. Lucia stood beside him, silent. When the last shovel of earth fell, she placed the silver pendant on the grave. Now you can rest, she whispered. Alessandro looked out at the horizon. What do we do now? Lucia took his hand. We live. That's all that's left to do. He nodded slowly, the wind carrying his father's last words through the morning air. Forgive. The sea took the rest. If this ending moved you, tell me in the comments what you felt when Rafael made his final choice. Do you believe redemption can come too late? Or is love enough to save even the damned? Share your thoughts and help us reach our first 100 voices before the next story begins. Because every ending leaves a ghost behind, and somewhere out there, another tale is waiting to be told.